Hey, what's going on, guys? Now, this has been a long time coming for a reputable, quote-unquote, pseudo-official leak on this, and this kind of deserves its own spotlight. So, without further ado, I give you the RX 470 and 460 are finally getting their asses here video, and they are coming in very soon, right after the release of nVidia's new Pascal-based Titan early next week. These two cards should launch very soon after on August 4th for the RX 470 and August 8th for the RX 460 respectively. So not only will AMD be filling out the entry to mid-entry level GPU market, but with nVidia fleshing out the top of the food chain in just a few days' time, we are set to have a fully next-genified lineup of GPUs from both companies, all the way from the bottom to the very top. And that being the case, this is just a very exciting time to be a gamer. It means that no matter what card you buy, next generation or last, entry level, or the biggest, baddest card you can get on the block, you'll be getting substantially more performance for less money than you would have gotten just 2 months ago when all these new GPUs started pouring out. So, what can we expect from these chips from AMD? Well, back at E3, Lisa Su, company CEO, had this to say.
And then we have two other cards here, which are pretty exciting as well. We have the RX 470 and the RX 460. The 470 is really focused on excellent performance per watt, so it's 2.8x over the previous generation. And you get full HD experiences, 1080p running 60 frames per second. Gorgeous card. We'll have many different versions of this from our add-in board partners. And then we have the 460, which is really focused on esports. So I heard about all those esports fans in the audience. This guy is going to be the best card in the industry. Less than 75 watts, cool, fast. I think you're going to love these cards.
Now, the RX 470 is using the exact same Polaris 10 silicone found in the more expensive RX 480. It's simply been cut down a little bit, being referred to in this slightly lesser form as Polaris 10 Pro as opposed to Polaris 10 XT on the RX 480. We can expect 1080p, 60 frames a second on AAA titles with high to max settings, and surely some light 1440p gaming as well, given what its fully equipped brother can do at that resolution and how slightly this card has been gimped. I think that'll go just fine. Lisa Su also makes mention, as you heard, that the RX 470 is particularly power efficient, providing 2.8x the efficiency over the previous generation of GCN GPUs, meaning, of course, performance per watt is just a lot better. Now, I've been saying this a bit, and of course, you guys already know it. Because part of this GPU has been disabled, running only 2048 of the GCN cores to the RX 480's 2304, and because the clock speeds are lower as well, with a base of only 926 and the boost of a still pretty high 1206, this card is not going to be working overly hard, given its pedigree and what silicone it's actually got lurking underneath that fan. So having said that, we should see nearly optimal performance here in terms of efficiency out of the Polaris 10 GPU in this Pro form. Of course, that efficiency will decrease if you overclock the chip, as always, but at least there appears to be substantial enough headroom for overclocking built right into the reference card this time. This thing does share the same single 6-pin configuration of the reference RX 480, but using roughly 30 watts less power and only a TDP of 120 watts total, there should be a substantial amount of headroom, like I say, left available for people that want to push this card a little bit more. The power should be there to do so. And after such a nudge, I wouldn't rule out things like the possibility of getting into VR, maybe not at the highest levels, but certainly getting into an Oculus Rift headset and being able to, fool around or whatever you like. And with a price of only $150, who knows? Maybe someone could still afford a VR setup after buying one of these. Certainly, this is better than our previous options for entry-level VR about 2 months ago when the R9 390 and GTX 1070 were between $300 and $400. keeping the same 256-bit memory interface as found on the RX 480, but also using slightly lower clock speed VRAM, this card still pushes a respectable as hell for the money or otherwise 211 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth. And using the lower clocks and core count on the GPU itself, we wind up with just under 5 teraflops of computing performance. Now, I have yet to come across a reliable picture of the reference model, but there are a ton of similarities obviously between this card and the RX 480, both being the same actual chip for one. We've seen this before with basically every other GPU ever produced. This is the fallback product for Polaris 10 when things in manufacturing do not go exactly to plan and there are slight defects in the chip or the chip does not run at the full required spec for the higher end SKU. This is essentially the GTX 1070 to the GTX 1080, the 980 Ti to the previous Titan, the upcoming GTX 1050 to the GTX 1060. It's simply another lower spec product that acts as a bailout option for the chip manufacturer to sell their slightly less than perfect GPUs, whereas their fully enabled higher end SKUs obviously require a near perfect manufacturing outcome and must run at the higher specs with all resources enabled, and achieving that 100% of the time simply isn't possible, which is why these SKUs exist. Now that being said, I still think it's possible that we could see a reference design that is the exact same graphics card that AMD printed out for the RX 480, and it is possible that we may be able to unlock those cards into a full-blown RX 480 by changing out the VBIOS and enabling the dormant resources on that GPU, going from Pro to XT and saving some coin in the process, but we shall see. Now, there are varying rumors that suggest AMD will only be launching the reference card in a 4GB model, but I lean toward the opinion of them releasing both an 8 and 4GB option. Either way, it has been confirmed that the add-in board partners will have the option of going with 8GB if they'd like, and I'm sure to fill in that $50 gap that exists between it and the base RX 480 at $199, the add-in board partners will be happy to make a little more money with double the memory as an option. Truth be told, I don't see the VRAM making too much of a difference anyway, at least for mini games being run at or below 1440p that are likely to run on these cards, but there certainly could be a consideration for someone looking at buying 2 of these cards for a Crossfire setup with roughly the equivalent performance of a 1070 and possibly even further gains down the road with next generation APIs. That could be a compelling choice for some people right out of the gate, or sometime down the road if they want to add another very easy boost to their system. Moving on now to the real game changer in my opinion, and I am not saying the RX 470 doesn't have a massive impact on the PC gaming landscape, because it obviously does, bringing that kind of performance to the masses, but the RX 460 is doing something that's never been done before in this world, and that is to bring console quality, aka real quality AAA gaming experiences to people that don't have a ton of money to spend on a quote-unquote gaming rig, or just for those people that may already have a PC but don't want to have to go out and get another power supply or a bigger case or a better CPU or whatever else to enable them to actually be able to make use of a nice GPU. This card will sell for $99 US. It'll be able to snap right in to most off-the-shelf PCs, even ones with tiny power supplies and lesser CPUs, and be able to provide a quality gaming experience in a lot of different boxes. In my opinion, this has not happened until now. All of the single slot GPUs of the past have been poor excuses in my opinion for a true gaming capable quote-unquote dedicated GPU, and unless you're playing a 10-year-old game, they just didn't get the job done. Well, I say to you, no more. We will have our games, we will have them all. The latest and greatest games will all boot up and play, finally, on a GPU that is accessible to nearly everyone. Lisa Su, CEO, called this their champion for esports. Speaking of titles like League of Legends and Dota, but surely this card will be able to at least get in the game and enable you to play the vast majority of newer AAA titles at moderate console-like resolutions and settings. We have to remember that this card comes in packing 896 next-generation GCN 4.0 cores, running a base clock of 1090 MHz to a boost speed of 1.2 GHz. That's good enough to give this little Wunderkind 2.2 teraflops of computing power, which is more than either the Xbox One or the PS4. All brought to you by a single Ben Franklin and one open PCIe slot on basically any motherboard that exists. You will see this card with either 2GB or 4GB of RAM for $20 more, and I wholeheartedly recommend the 4GB version, as you'll likely find yourself hamstringed in terms of being able to actually get into some of the newer games with only 2GB of RAM. In either configuration, that memory will interface on a 128-bit bus at 7GB per second and provide a cool 112GB per second of total memory bandwidth. Given those specs, I do expect this card to be able to output console quality graphics at console-like resolutions and also be able to perform admirably in 1080p with reduced settings keeping things above 30 FPS for the most part, 60 FPS or above in esports titles being no problem for this card whatsoever. As with all of the newer Pascal and Polaris-based GPUs, the RX 460 and 470 are exceptionally good at media delivery. Both support the new DisplayPort 1.3 and 1.4 and are HDR ready, which I keep hearing is absolutely killer in person, and they do support HDMI 2.0 for 4K media delivery over a secure HDCP 2.2 connection at 60 Hz, which is sweet. They will be a great option for anyone looking to build or enhance a home theater PC, making that little box sing with great audio and video capabilities, as well as providing a great gaming experience on the couch if you're so reclined. To sum up, these should be great cards and products for a ton of consumers out there who will likely just consume the crap out of these things when they're released in just over a week. I fully expect all of the initial batch of these cards to sell out immediately, as has been the case with every other GPU to release in the last 2 months, and I also fully expect those who do go out and buy these cards to be very, very pleased indeed with the overall accessibility of getting one of these things to work in their systems, and the overall performance and value should be just fantastic. Of course, AMD cannot be alone in that very, very receptive market between $100 and $200 for very long. nVidia is set to release the GTX 1050 at a minimum, should be out by December, with other potentially lower end products making their way out as early as Q1 2017. Although, with nVidia's very aggressive recent release schedule, I wouldn't put it past them to make a move much, much sooner. They always seem to do that when we least expect. Those guys are sneaky. I am also super excited to hopefully hear something more from AMD soon regarding Vega. If we're ever going to have better performance per dollar up in the higher end of the market, where diminishing returns are known to kick in anyway, we have got to have some good competition in there from AMD. I suspect the remaining stock of Maxwell-based 980 Ti's and other cards will likely dry up within a couple of months, as there are some great deals to be had, but we will need something other than just competition from nVidia itself and its board partners to spark another boost in value at the high end. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. As always, I enjoyed bringing it to you. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great one. Peace out.